why I agree with you, Popak. We're going to see these two groupings. I think you'll see October trial grouping, which will be live on TV streamed here on the Midas Touch Network, and then you're going to see a later one.
He said, and by the way, that whole streaming thing, back to what I said before, right out of Scott McAfee's standing order. Everything. He believes that live television, televising of judicial events is an appropriate transparency for democracy. He baked right into his order, and then he puts it on YouTube, the recorded version. So I don't know how they're going to exactly do it here, whether YouTube's going to be the framework, or it's going to be a court system of live streaming, but he believes in live streaming, and he knew he had this case when he issued that particular order. Chesbro goes even one step further, which shows that he either doesn't understand RICO conspiracy and how it's pled and what needs to be proved by the prosecutor, or he does and he's just lying in his pleadings, because he says, and I want to know who the unindicted co-conspirators are and the ones that aren't named, and I have the right to know that too. No, you don't. The reason RICO, coming out of the 70s in the hands of prosecutors like Fani Willis, is such a powerful and successful tool, one that has been that power and that ability of a prosecutor to do it this way has been upheld in hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of cases, state and federal. So we're not going to go back and challenge what happened in 1970 when this law came out and the Georgia law came out, 20 years later. That's over. It is constitutional, it is appropriate, but it is like no other individual criminal count out there. It is its own beast, and it's the reason it should strike fear in the hearts of defendants when they open the indictment. It's one thing to say, crap, I got indicted for a felony. It's a whole nother world to say count one is a criminal RICO with 18 other people, 161 overt acts, and a number of predicate acts. That is a bigger deal because I'm not saying the burden is lessened on the prosecutor, but her burden of proof on the elements means that she can put on evidence, as you just laid out then, against all of them, and then the jury is left trying to figure out. And yes, there's a slop over effect. Some people might say, but what if they get confused and there's a little bit of a slop over about, they're really mad about what Sidney Powell did in Coffee County, but then they're less mad, but it's one big conspiracy. So there is that slop over. That's why co-defendants fight like mad to get out of RICO conspiracies, because they're going to get tarred and feathered with other people's bad acts in front of the jury, and they don't want that to happen. And that's what we're watching now, this fight to the death to try to avoid it. And now they think, like Chesbro, he gets to pick who's going to be next to him, right? That he shouldn't, I said it on the hot take, if he wanted to be tried by himself at a table for one prosecution, then he should have committed the crime by himself. But because he's alleged that she has to make, back to Fani, she has to make out to the jury with all the elements that this was a sprawling conspiracy that had multi-level parts and multiple participants. That's her burden. And if they find there was no conspiracy, which I find it hard to believe, given the weight of the evidence we've seen already, if they do that, then she has lost. It's binary. The switch is either on, there's a conspiracy. Now, they could find a conspiracy, the jury, and find certain people weren't part of it. But if they don't find the conspiracy, which I think there's absolutely no chance of happening, then she's done. She's out. She's lost all night.
Well, look, the conspiracy, like the hard work's been done. Now she just has to introduce the evidence, and she lays it all out in the indictment. I mean, you could literally read from the indictment as your opening statement, and then say, okay, here's the email, here's the document, here's the communication, here's the text messages, here's the video, here's the tweet, here's all of that. And Chesbro just wants to be like, all I did was send 18 emails. He says that in that motion to sever. All I did was do 18 emails. Well, look, if all you did was one email and the one email was a crime, that's a crime. So he doesn't want to be anywhere near Sidney Powell, because I think he thinks that the types of crimes that the way he's going to put on the defense is, this is just what lawyers do. They write emails, they write memos, and he's going to try to confuse the jury that conduct is just what lawyers do, which it's absolutely not. And then you've got Sidney Powell, release the Kraken, and then like breaking into election offices. And I think the jury's going to look, what? What is going on here? That's what's happening. And by the way, that same look that I just did, What's going on here? You know what that was like, Popak? It was Mark Meadows when he took the stand. What a humiliating performance. Understand now, I don't. It still could be a potential close call because 11th Circuit case law on removals consistently emphasizes that there is a very, very low threshold to remove a state court case to criminal in a criminal case to remove a state court case to federal court. But regardless, he's further incriminated himself. Here's basically the standards for removal of a state to federal case. Number one, was the individual a federal official? Two, were they acting under the color of their federal authority? And number three, do they have credible federal defenses? And an evidentiary hearing was held earlier this past week before Judge Steve Jones. An evidentiary hearing is what it sounds like, evidentiary, evidence. So you can't just do what these MAGA Republicans do on Fox or Newsmax and just, beat their chest and say whatever. You have to show facts and evidence. And so apparently Mark Meadows figured there's no other way to try to get the case removed to federal court, or he was just so deluded by his buying his own crap that he sells people that he didn't think he was getting a cross-examined. I'll get your take on it. So he took the stand, and it did not go very well for him as he tried to establish those elements. And the cross-examination from Fulton County District Attorney Pawnee Willis' team was fast, furious, and fierce. And they got him stumbling and mumbling, and he didn't know what his job was, and he acted like he was confused about what the chief of staff was, so much so that in the post-evidentiary hearing briefing, there was a footnote where Fulton County District Attorney Pawnee Willis is like, you don't even have to credit anything he said because he perjured himself. He lied about everything. He claimed he didn't know about the fake electors. Then we had to show him an email where he said, I'm the one coordinating the fake electors. He consistently used the term we in all of his emails, and then when cross-examined on why he used we, he's like, that's just what I used, but I didn't actually mean to say that I am part of we. So she's like, that's just ridiculous, okay? When he says we, it means we. He lied consistently, and we had to show him emails that demonstrated while he was on the stand that he lied. Judge, this case should be remanded. The criminal enterprise has nothing to do with official federal duties. It's purely political and criminal political, trying to change votes from the winning candidate to the losing candidate. Has nothing to do with the chief of staff role at all. Popak, what'd you make of all of this?
There's a hit piece out on us. Like, I'm here to tell you the house is on fire and you should get out beforehand. Listen.
Bienvenidos a Planet Honda.
Hola.
Hola, hola, ¿me puedes ayudar? Sí, ¿qué regalo es esto?
Por supuesto, tenemos más de 1 millón de partes.
Quiso decir más de 1000.
Ah,
Te puede cambiar a tu esposo.
si cambia de opinión. Hermosa.
Si cambias de opinión, puedes cambiar tu Honda por uno nuevo. Eso también está bien.
También.
Digo, ¿quién nuestro mejor precio todos los días?
No solo hablamos español.
No entendemos. La mayoría. Es verdad.
Let's be real. Getting over someone you saw forever with, that is a breakup that hits different. There was a time when I was stuck in a cycle of overthinking, romanticizing the past, and convincing myself that I had missed my one shot at love. I thought I was done. Don't get me wrong, I always knew that I would get over the relationship. Always knew that. That was never the question in my mind. It was more about how I wanted to come out on the other side of that breakup. I wanted to understand my patterns. I wanted to stop second guessing myself, and I wanted to know how to choose me better next time. I really wanted to learn that. And if therapy's been on your mind, this is your sign to stop putting it off. BetterHelp makes starting therapy way easier and way less intimidating. You just fill out a quick questionnaire and you get matched with a therapist in just a few days. And if the vibe's not right, you can just switch therapists at no extra cost. They've got over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 star rating on Trustpilot, so it's definitely a platform
I have a new name for Mark Meadows. It's Mark Mummy. I don't know what he was doing up there on the stand. I'm not sure he knew what he was doing up there on the stand. And it was legal malpractice and maybe more for his lawyer to let him take the stand to testify as he did. Because as you said, and we'll talk about the criminal act of perjury. We talk about it a lot. Perjury, perjure himself, perjury. It's a crime. And I think it's a crime two ways. I think it's a crime federally because you just lied to a federal judge. And I think the Northern District of Atlanta, the Northern District of Georgia sitting in Atlanta, the U.S. Attorney's Office should be opening up an investigation as to whether Mark Meadows lied. And I'm going to go through some things that Mark Meadows knew or should have known from the Jan 6 report that came out in December on this very issue, that if his lawyer had seen this and let him take the stand, it's legal malpractice. If his lawyer didn't see it, that's legal malpractice. And if you let him lie, that's supporting perjury, which is a crime in itself. But I think it's a crime two ways. I think it's a perjury crime for federally, and I think it's a crime in state because it's ultimately a state proceeding. He called it a civil proceeding, a state proceeding involving Fani Willis. I think she can also prosecute. Why does that matter? Because if Jack Smith wants to continue to squeeze Mark Meadows, he just got a major unforced error for Mark Meadows to use against him to get him to testify, because everybody wants Mark Meadows to flip. We sort of thought he flipped with the feds, but then we read the indictment for Jack Smith and we didn't really see him mentioned much in there, not even as an unindicted co-conspirator. So we were a little concerned. Then Fani Willis indicted him, and we're like, okay, well, he's not, doesn't seem to be cooperating appropriately. How is he cooperating with the feds if he's being indicted by state? So this is actually, Fani Willis' team must have been salivating when they heard that Mark Meadows was going to take the stand. And because that is a rare opportunity for a prosecutor to get a defendant under oath and be able to show that they're committing a new crime, which she can then use. She could revise the indictment now, amend and supersede her indictment to bring it count. And I think based on what you put up on the screen, she will. And let me explain why we know he lied and what he lied about. He said a lot of things that were not true. But the one in particular that she was able to show perjury, she would be able to show perjury, is he said he had no involvement in the coordination of the fake elector scheme. That's the sentence. No involvement in no one at all. He wasn't like, I can't remember, I can't recall, maybe I did. He didn't equivocate at all. He said, point blank, I have no involvement. And that can't possibly be true if he had read section 3.2 of chapter 3 of the Jan 6 committee report on this very issue, which I will now read aloud because it's right out of the cross-examination of Fani Willis. We know her team read it. And I want to talk about Cassidy Hutchinson, who's also cooperating with Fani Willis, the former assistant to Meadows. This is from the report. In early December, the highest levels of the Trump campaign took note of Ken Chesbro, who we talked about, state elector plan, and began to operationalize it. On December 6th, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows forwarded a copy of Chesbro's November 18, 2020 memo to Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller, writing, this is Meadows, let's have a discussion about this tomorrow. Miller replied that he just engaged with reporters on the subject, to which Meadows wrote, if you're on it, then never mind the meeting. We, there's that we again, just need to have someone coordinating the electors for states. I don't know how we can mean anything but we in that sentence. Miller clarified, the report continues, that he had only been working the PR angle and that they should still meet, to which Meadows answered, got it. Later that week, Miller sent Meadows a spreadsheet, get this pen, from the Trump campaign had compiled. It listed contact information for nearly all of the 79 GOP nominees to the Electoral College on the November ballot for, we can fill in the blank here, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And on December 8th, Meadows received a text message from a former state legislator in Louisiana recommending that the proposed, get this, here's the quote, proposed electors for Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nevada all meet next Monday at their state capitals, call themselves to order, elect officials, and cast their votes for the president. Then they certify their votes and transmit their certificate to Washington. Isn't that a very pithy recitation of the conspiracy? Meadows replied, "We are." There's the we again. So I don't know how you don't know what your own reports and people have testified against you, and then get on the stand and say it didn't happen and you weren't involved. I'm not even going to read, because it'll take too much time, the whole other set of text messages and emails that are reflected in the Jan 6 report. I tell people to go online and look it up, related to Mark Meadows in chapter 2. The chapter entitled, "I just want to find 11,780 votes." Like, it's not hard to find this in the report. So, let me just end it with Cassidy Hutchinson, because she will turn out to be the ruin of Mark Meadows and put him in jail. Cassidy Hutchinson, his former assistant, who once had, to continue our theme for the show, a bought and paid for lawyer by Trump PAC, who told her not to remember things that she told him she remembered. She then switched counsel, hired Jody Hunt out of Washington, a very well-respected former DOJ official, who actually worked with Mark, who was Jeff Sessions' lawyer at one point. And then she flipped her testimony, cooperated with the Jan 6 committee, and testified in November to Fani Willis' special purpose grand jury. Didn't just testify. The reporting is she is cooperating, meaning she turned over willingly all her texts and emails. I am sure Cassidy Hutchinson has been guiding all of the strategy of cross-examination, and that's the witness that when she comes through that door, that wooden door in a trial, Mark Meadows is cooked. Somebody of this 19 then is going to have to cut a deal. They can't all go to trial, and then they're going to start turning on each other. First among them, the person who just committed perjury and has another set of crimes and a lead witness against him. He was, I mean, I've never seen anything. But to your point, turning back, you said at the top, maybe under the specific law of the 11th Circuit, he may skate free, but it's like that old joke then. The operation was a success, but the patient died. Sure, you may get your removal, but look what you've done to you and your case.
Exactly. You've now, even if it's removed, you then have to address your motion to dismiss, and now before Judge Steve Jones, you perjured yourself, and now you're going to claim that the supremacy clause gives you immunity, where you basically admitted to the Hatch Act violations. You basically confessed to it and then committed perjury before the judge. That's his best case scenario right now. But ultimately, we'll see what Judge Jones does. It's again, it's emphasized over and over again in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal about removal being a very, very low standard. And so the argument by Meadows' lawyers is, even if there's some nexus to an overt act, setting aside the underlying crimes, the mere fact that Meadows may have been doing something a chief of staff does, like, as at a level of generality, like setting up a call. Granted, the call was on a topic that was a felony criminal conspiracy. The Meadows argument is, look, you just set up a call, so therefore it should be removed to federal court, even if the actual crime the call led to, that he was involved in, is not something in the course and scope. He set up the call, and Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is like, no, you have to focus, Judge, on the criminal charges and the criminal enterprise, not some scintilla of a nexus to one of the overt acts, where the overt acts led to criminal conduct. So there's
Let me
a
ask you
level of...
something. Yeah, let me ask you something. I think we need to touch on it. I want to get your opinion. So the judge asked for additional briefing on a particular point, show where his head is at before he makes a ruling. And he asked particularly for the lawyers to comment on whether all of the overt acts that Meadows is alleged to have committed in furtherance of the conspiracy, if some of them are clearly political, but others in the judge's mind may not be, maybe ordinary run-of-the-mill, non-political chief of staff stuff, what happens to the removal analysis under the statute? Ben, tell me what you think that means about where Jones is at, and where do you think it should end up in terms of some or all or bits or pieces of the act, some being clearly chief of staff stuff and some being no way political crimes.
I read it as beneficial for Fawny Willis actually in setting the record for appeal to make the issue as discreet as possible. I mean, I think it was kind of a kind of a softball toss, and then Fawny Willis responded, finding that at least one, but not all, overt acts attributed to the defendant would not be sufficient to authorize removal. And what she's saying is, look, focus on the criminal conduct was outside the course and scope, not that there's some potential nexus to an overt act. And again, the reason why we're even in this, like, why is the judge asking the question, right? Like, why doesn't anybody know, hey, this other case is just like this? This has never happened before in history. We've never had to look at the like relationship between a federal criminal removal statute and the fact that a former administration that disgraced the White House engaged in a criminal racketeering conspiracy and tried to overthrow our democracy, and then have the audacity to use the federal removal statute to try to get the case removed to federal court by saying that their crimes to overthrow democracy were in the course and scope of federal law.
Can I make one last comment on that? Sorry, yeah. And Fawny Willis, Ben, what you just said just so perfectly. When she's opposing this federal officer trying to get the benefit of going into federal court because in his view he's being prosecuted for just doing his job as a federal officer, she said in her briefing, you got it ass backwards. The reason for the federal removal statute is that the state shouldn't be interfering with a federal officer's duties or responsibilities. Here, a federal officer, and not just one, are interfering with the state officer's duties and responsibilities. It's exactly backwards, and that can't be the basis of federal removal. When he calls up, because one of the elements of this conspiracy is a conspiracy to have a public officer, state officer in Georgia, look past his oath of office, right? And get a conspiracy to make him not abide by his oath of office. That's feds interfering in state, not states interfering in feds. And I think that's something that Judge Jones, who's really smart and is asking the right questions, is going to have to grapple with. But I love her point. Disregard everything the mummy just said because he's a liar.
No doubt about it. And look, don't mess with Fulton County District Attorney Fawny Willis, because that briefing right there was some of the most sophisticated, intelligent, but also like pithy. It just got to the point in such a perfect way. I would put it on par with the briefing we've seen by Jack Smith's team. And sometimes feds have the reputation of being kind of the better on paper writers, and the state prosecutors kind of the more like better in like the trials and RICO cases. But her briefing right there, I put it on par, and even potentially, I thought stronger than even any of the other briefs that I read. Anyway, we'll speak a little bit more about Special Counsel Jack Smith, some big news there as well. And then we should talk about New York Attorney General Letitia James. She has that civil case ready to go to trial in like the next 30 days. Let's not forget. And she's saying now that there were years based on the undisputed evidence she believes where Donald Trump committed a fraudulent valuation scheme as much as $2.2 billion in 1 year alone. We'll talk about that and more when we get back.
If you have a family like I do, you know how much your loved ones depend on you. In a worst case scenario, you wouldn't want them to worry about money.
This is an everyday invitation to feel alive. It's a multivitamin and a mindset. So nourish your mind and your body with your daily. Because life isn't just measured in birthdays and milestone moments. It's the chaos and the calm. The weird and the wonderful that makes you feel authentically you. So start every day filled with goodness, knowing that you are not your age, you are your energy. Let me take you forward into the next 50.
To represent justice, we are shifting power, not just sharing people's stories. Our mission is to empower formerly incarcerated people to share their stories using film and media, and support impact campaigns around the country to demand an end to mass incarceration in the U.S. We use film
and I wanted to be a part of the ambassador program because I wanted to be with like-minded individuals with lived experiences like myself. What I want people to walk away with is that, it's not what we see on the outside of us. There's a lot more to us. It's a lot deeper than that.
Wow, this journey, I came into this focus on just the project and the film, but what I've gotten from it is so much more that is truly irreplaceable.
Landmark film is the making of a mask. And working with the idea of the mask I always had on since I was a child. So Landmark identity journey, but also being accountable for the mask we as a people are created from.
Policy Genius was built to modernize the life insurance industry. Their technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers, and in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $25 a month for 1 million coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius has licensed, award-winning agents who can help you find the best fit for your needs. They work for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Policy Genius is for parents, caregivers, and anyone else who has people who depend on them. They simplify the process of getting life insurance so you can protect the people you love. There are no added fees, and your personal details are private. No wonder they have thousands of five-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Your loved ones deserve the financial safety net. You deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. This is Michael Popuk of Legal AF. If you're like me, you understand the pains of choosing what to wear. Let's face it, most clothes are uncomfortable, or too tight, or are never actually the size you really are. Not to mention the annoyance of trying to put a good outfit together. And when you do have a good fit, you can only wear it for a few hours before you have an important meeting or dinner, and then you gotta change all over again. Everyone wants to dress the best and look good at all times because, frankly, it's a confidence booster. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, one-quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. Rhone's comfortable four-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy whatever way comes your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. And with its Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. I absolutely love Rhone. As you can see, this has truly become my go-to commuter fit and on the Legal AF podcast recordings. We're on the move a lot, whether it's jumping from meeting to meeting or catching a flight or an important dinner. The Rhone commuter collection has never let me down. The versatility and comfort of the collection is undefeated. Even after I wear it all day, I still feel super fresh because of that Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to rhone.com/legalaf and use promo code LegalAF to save 20% on your entire order. That's 20% on your entire order when you head to RHONE/LegalAF, promo code LegalAF. Find your corner office.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Popak's ad reads are just simply the best. Popak, they're our sponsors, and I make sure after those ad reads that I buy anything that you're selling, that you're wearing, that you're eating, that you're doing. How can I be like Popak? Is basically how I so Popak. More than how I can be like Popak, though, I think about how can I be as efficient as federal judge Anya Chutkin, because not only is she being incredibly efficient with her docket in the Washington, D.C. DC federal case brought by special counsel Jack Smith. She's really asserted herself as a judge amongst judges here, really taking command of all of the Trump criminal cases, even though she's not involved in any of the other ones other than the DC case brought by special counsel Jack Smith for Donald Trump's efforts to try to overthrow our democracy. But she's let it be known in a world of inexperienced judges like Judge Cannon and just other judges in general that she's the one who will be having her case go first, and that the importance of that case, but just how she is not going to let Donald Trump or anybody just make a mockery of the courtroom or get it, be disorganized. It's just pitch perfect judicial work right now, and so much has happened that I look back and I said, was this the week where she said trial? Because it feels like that was ages ago. But no, that was this week where on Monday, it was the first day of the week, the same day there was an evidentiary hearing of Meadows, and there was also an evidentiary hearing, I'll mention in passing, of Peter Navarro, one of Donald Trump's top aides, who tried to assert executive privilege in his trial next week. And there, another DC federal judge, Amit Mehta, called Peter Navarro's evidence, not evidence, it was weak sauce. That was an exact quote from Judge Mehta, and denied Peter Navarro's ability to make this executive privilege defense in his trial. Navarro went out and started begging people for money and just whining and complaining. But back to Judge Chutkan, that status conference, trial setting conference, was held on Monday. You had Donald Trump's lawyers led by John Lauro. You had the Jack Smith team led by Molly Gaston there. And you had Trump's lawyers just saying, Judge, you have all these other cases that have taken 2 years. And then Judge Chutkan says, excuse me, the case that you're citing is before me. I know why that case took 2 years. That was because of COVID, or that was because there were multiple superseded. Don't misrepresent the cases before me. And then you would have Donald Trump like, this is a miscarriage of justice. We are not going to be ready. And then you have Jack Smith's team, led by Molly Gaston and Tom Wyndham, at this hearing saying, Judge, these are the same lawyers who were on a media tour saying Trump's ready. They said it 3 days ago on the news. They said Trump is ready to go. Alina Habba said Trump is ready. He's smarter than anybody in the world, and so therefore he's ready to go. They've had access to all of these things. I thought another interesting point before turning it over to you, Popak, here is one of the things that Donald Trump's lawyers did not argue, which just goes to show you all of the lies that Donald Trump, MAGA, and Fox spew. They didn't say, Judge, all of the January 6th committee records are destroyed. That would be a pretty good argument, right, if you wanted to delay a trial, that all of the records are destroyed. That's the first argument I would make if I was representing somebody, is to say that all the records are destroyed, because that's what Fox is lying about and Trump is lying about. They actually made the opposite argument, right? They said there are too many records. We're not able to review. We're not going to be prepared, right? While they're doing the media tour and saying that they are going to be prepared. And so Jack Smith's team saying, well, a lot of those records, it's like the January 6th committee records that we turned over are 1 million records. The Secret Service records are about 3 million records. The other records belong to them. So there really isn't that big of a universe of documents here. And by the way, they said that they're ready. So Chutkan set March 4th, 2024 as the trial date. And I'm pretty confident that's going to stick. Popak, what did you make of that trial setting by Judge Chutkan, but also some of the other Jack Smith filings of late?
Yeah, first of all, it's exactly what you and I predicted, that at the appropriate time, and the appropriate time is now, Judge Chutkan would step forward and make her case the historically important for justice case that it always was meant to be. And she is going to seize the historical moment that she knows she has. She'll go down in history as the judge that presided over a case that can, I believe, that will result in the conviction of a former president for conspiracy and election interference. And she knows it. And she knows the eyes of history are watching her. And I'm sure she's cringed a bit about how that same spotlight has, as we like to say in the law or in life, a spotlight, you either shine or you melt, right? Under, a piece of carbon under pressure becomes diamond or dust. Judge Chutkan is a diamond. Judge Cannon is looking like she's dust. And we knew at the appropriate time, whenever her proceedings, when the moment turned to her, that she would take command. As I said on the hot take, she's now big-footed, which is the appropriate thing to do, all the other cases. As soon as she's watching mindfully what's going on in Georgia, and she saw that the March 4th date that Fawny Willis wanted for her trials looks like it was slipping because of Chesbro and Powell getting an October 23rd date, meeting on this giant chessboard. Fawny had to take the position, okay, we'll put everybody on October. That freed up March, but she knew, and you and I talked about this on a legal AF a couple weeks ago, that she would have to reach out to some other judges to get the March date that she wanted. She sort of reverse engineered this. She wanted March because it was right before Super Tuesday, and she had already kind of picked the date. She rejected, both in her mind and in her courtroom with John Lauro, the lawyer for Donald Trump. She told him point blank, she cut him off at the knees early on. I don't want to hear the words 2026 come out of your mouths in this courtroom. I'm paraphrasing. We're not talking about a 2026 trial. She did say that. So she reversed engineered. She wanted March. Fawny cleared herself out because of circumstances in Georgia, leaving one state court criminal judge left, Judge Mershon, who was going to go to trial March 25th in the Stormy Daniels business record fraud New York State court case. So, as we predicted, she is allowed, all judges are allowed under the rules of judicial ethics and canons, and code of canons, to call each other, to coordinate, for the purpose of coordinating related to a defendant or issue before them, as long as making that phone call doesn't give a benefit to either side. She has to make that determination for herself. And she said, I'm going to call Judge Mershon. We know that because Judge Mershon, the Unified Court System of New York spokesperson, issued a press release that said that Judge Mershon's chambers called 2 Tuesdays ago to have a conversation with Judge Mershon. And we don't know exactly the content of that conversation, but the result of it is the Stormy Daniels trial is not going in March, and the March 4th date is now reserved for the only case, let's be frank here, the only case that had a shot at going to trial before the election as necessary, as justice and our democracy requires, was the one defendant, 4-count indictment by Jack Smith against Donald Trump. No, not 18 other defendants, not even 3 or 4 other defendants, like in Mar-a-Lago. One guy on the other side of the V, Donald Trump. 4 counts. I'm sorry, 4 conspiracies and 4 counts. That's it. And he knew if he lined it up that way, Jack Smith, and did a very surgically precise on purpose, leaving out, editing out things that would get in the way of making this case go to trial on a fast track. He knew he got the indictment, then he got the right judge, and then he went for the kill, which is, I'm going to push the case in our request back in January, knowing, and of course they took the bait, that Trump's lawyers were going to ask for some ridiculous date, making him evidently more reasonable, and the judge said, yeah, I'm not doing January, but I'm not doing 2026. March, day before Super Tuesday, seems perfect to me. I've already cleared it out with other people. She didn't say that, but that's what she did. Now, I had a debate with Karen on our Wednesday show about whether she also, as a courtesy, called Judge Cannon to say, I'm doing my trial in March. It may bleed over to your main date. Do you have a problem with that? Karen doesn't think that phone call took place. Let me, before I go on to the other things that happened to the courtroom, do you think she called Cannon?
Yeah, I think so. What do you think?
Yeah, I think she did. I think she's not going to ignore Judge Cannon. And Judge Cannon, because this could be a 6 or 8 week trial, it would naturally bleed into an argument that Judge Cannon's going to see in her courtroom. Like, we just got called to trial with Judge Chutkan. We can't do your trial in May, which of course Cannon will be receptive to. Like, all right, we'll reschedule. But I think Chutkan is a mature, sophisticated, seasoned federal judge with tons more experience. It's like you can't even compare. She's like the Babe Ruth of judges compared to Judge Cannon. Even in her own trial experience as a civil lawyer, before she took the bench, she tried 20 cases. She's had hundreds of cases that she's tried, including dozens of Jan 6 cases in front of her. She is the preeminent judge, and we knew at the appropriate time she'd take control. In the courtroom, Lauro found himself himself running into a steamroller in terms of Judge Chuck and having made up her mind. And when they said all these ridiculous things like, Judge, you know, the amount of the data that we've gotten from Jack Smith, if you stacked it end to end, it would reach the height of the Washington Monument, which is a bizarre Freudian slip to talk about the Washington Monument, which was the site of where all the Proud Boys got 200 people together to attack the Capitol. Put that aside for a minute. And it would be the equivalent, Judge, of reading War and Peace every day. And she said, stop. You're acting like your client is some sort of poor person that doesn't have resources or financial means. And that's not the case. Put more people, have him hire more people to review the evidence. And I said this in a hot take then, and I know since you've been in your career too, the days of people, looking through boxes of physical documents are over. They've been over for over 20 years. We're in the world of e-discovery, electronic discovery. There may be a piece of paper here and there, but 99.9% of what Jack Smith is turning over to, in terms of discovery, required discovery, information to Trump is in the form of a server. It's a hard drive. It's a thumb drive. It's electronic. So what you do, when I've been involved in complicated cases with terabytes of information, is that you load it into a database, right? There are a number of vendors that I won't promote because they're not currently advertising on Legal AF that you use, and then you sit on screens, and if you need more people, you hire them. Temporary lawyers, temporary paralegals. There's a whole cottage industry in India, of all places, because they can do overnight work where they look at documents, and you have them do the first cut. So you might have to put 40 people on this, but he's got money. I just got through reading again the 400 pages of his testimony to Letitia James in the New York Attorney General case, which we'll talk about next. And he said, I've got tons of money. I've got lots of money. And more is coming in each day, he said. The only expense I really have is attorney's fees. So she said, stop acting like you've got a poor person and you're representing like you're some sort of public defender. You've got a rich guy, have him hire people. We're going to trial in March. And that's the end of it. You can make whatever else argument you want, and good day. But again, you see the contrast, Ben, or at least our audience does, between the rough and tumble world of silent treatment in Georgia procedural law, where you almost never get to see the judge. He hasn't even scheduled one yet. The judge hasn't scheduled the hearing in Georgia yet, and look what you and I are reporting on a daily basis between Canada and Chuck. But I love the results because it clears out the path. It announces to the world there is going to be, come hell or high water, a criminal case about Donald Trump's clinging to power and his failure to transition peacefully and his involvement and leadership of a coup that needs to happen. And 63 or 65% of Americans, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, want it to happen to help them make the decision about who should occupy the Oval Office again. Before that election, and it's now a certainty. This should get much bigger press. Mar-a-Lago's interesting, and if he did all the bad things of compromising our national security and hiding national defense information and participating in a conspiracy, I won't be prosecuted for that. Does that have to be done before the election? No, this case does. And everything else needs to take a back seat. Now, Jack Smith's not going to dismiss or offer to stay the case tomorrow. We'll get there eventually today on the podcast, but he'll just use it to whipsaw Donald Trump as he focuses on the main case before Judge Chuck in the court he wants, the jury pool that he wants, and home court advantage.
Yeah, so to clarify my statement before too, I think Judge Chutkin reached out to Judge Cannon. I don't think that Judge Cannon necessarily has the maturity to return that phone call or to pick it up as truly, but I think Judge Chutkin would have reached out and said, hey, just want to check on your scheduling, and I don't think that Judge Cannon is capable of handling herself. I really the more you learn about her, she really has a lot of Trump qualities. Her inexperience. It's okay to be inexperienced. We all start inexperienced, right? I'm inexperienced on a lot of things every single day, but where an experienced person tries to deal with their inexperience on certain topics questions, to ask for help, to admit where you don't know things. And, when you look at how someone in a leadership position, for example, would handle COVID, you wouldn't say that you know everything and you're the one who can solve it and you're the one who can fix it and inject bleach into your arms, right? Or let's lock up the main expert, Dr. Fauci. That's where the Republicans are. That's when they attack evidence, they attack science, they just attack all logic. And Judge Eileen Cannon, to me, is really embodied in that. And on the other hand, Judge Chutkan is evidence-based. And, it's like these MAGA people, they go and they do their interviews on Newsmax and Fox as though that's not a thing that then has a repercussion anywhere else. And that's also the stochastic terrorism and gaslighting that they engage in, where they think they just say it to their one audience, and then they go into a courtroom and they're like, we're not prepared, we're not ready. You just said you were ready. You just said you were prepared. You said you were prepared to cross-examine former Vice President Pence already. And so Donald Trump's now posting memes of Judge Chutkan calling her a Marxist, and reposting, she's a Marxist, she's a Marxist, she's a Marxist. You just shut up. It's like, in addition to just being a fascist, traitorous, criminal, malignant narcissist, and you see this more and more with independents.
So the Senate confirmed a Marxist 90-0 when she was up to be a federal judge. I just can't even. Miss Jenny, there's nothing in her past that suggests that she's a communist, a Marxist. But these things are really weird. I just want to mention this one thing, and I'm not defending Judge Chutkan at all. But it's really weird if she's become a Trumper, because that's not her background. The reason she was picked, I just want to put this out there, because I know the people in Florida that are involved in this, is Marco Rubio, who's the senator from Florida, who's really, I guess he could be a Trumper, but he's really not taking an active role. You barely see why. I kind of forgot he was a senator anymore. He so rarely shows up doing anything. But Marco Rubio had an opening in the Southern District of Florida when Judge Rosenberg moved off the court, and that particular position was open in the most rural hinterland of the Southern District in a little town called Fort Pierce. And he needed a conservative. He needed a Federalist Society member. He wanted a Hispanic, and the person that fit the bill, who also happened to live in Vero Beach near Fort Pierce and was willing to work out of the Fort Pierce courthouse, was Eileen Cannon, a Federalist Society. I think she went to Georgetown or she went to Duke. She went to one of our schools. I forget which one. But it was really a Marco Rubio pick, not before Trump became MAGA. But yes, I don't know why she doesn't acknowledge that she doesn't know what she's doing or talking about, and just get stronger staff to help her. Because I saw a federal judge, even Ludwig, the federal judge, former federal judge of Orion, Mount Rushmore, conservative Federalist judges. Even he has said, you make mistakes your first year or so on the federal bench, you just do. But, you learn from them, and or you consult with more senior people. She's got Judge Altanaga, the chief judge, who was a state court judge in Miami that I approved from, and then became elevated to the federal bench and runs the federal court. Go to her. Talk to other judges to learn how to handle things. You don't have to hermetically seal yourself in some sort of, Fort Pierce thing and not make phone calls. Pick up the phone and call the chief judge of your district and ask her opinions about how to handle things. That's what I would do.
Well, I'll just say this. We'll have a respectful disagreement on Rubio there, because I vehemently disagree. Rubio is a disgusting human being, and I feel strongly about that. When Eileen Cannon assumed office November 13th of 2020, 10 days before that, on November 3rd of 2020, this is what Marco Rubio said when that MAGA Republican caravan attacked Joe Biden and candidate Joe Biden's bus. Remember when that happened? Marco Rubio said, we love what they did and hope that happens in Florida. That's what Marco Rubio said.
That's true. Yeah, he is a dirtbag.
So let me give you that data point on Marco Rubio. 10 days later, Judge Eileen Cannon, who you mentioned, Rubio appoints.
I like that. That's a good connectivity. I like that. I'm wrong. I stand corrected.
we can see, and part of experience. Hope corrects me a lot. Part of experience. One other thing I'll mention is speaking about Judge such a shit show over there and so disorganized before her, where you have like invited questions about this and what do you think about this? Like she like watches Fox and then asks a question, and then so you have this filing by one of the co-defendants' lawyers, former Donald Trump's co-defendant, Carlos Rivera, who's being paid by Donald Trump's PAC, who spends the first, few paragraphs of this opposition to this Garcia hearing regarding his potential conflicts of interest, basically saying he doesn't think there's any conflict of interest at all, that he's representing Carlos de Oliveira, and that there are witnesses who may be testifying against Carlos de Oliveira. He sees no reason why Carlos de Oliveira should be briefed about these potential conflicts of interest. And then you go to the very bottom, and it's like, further, undersigned counsel no longer represents the other individuals, and new independent counsel is being made available to advise them going forward. So talk about burying the lead right there. He's basically saying that you don't need, Judge, to have one of these conflict hearings about whether I'm conflicted should be representing witnesses who may be testifying against Trump and my client, because I'm not representing the witnesses anymore. Which you probably lead with that, but he kind of buries that, and you bury the lead when you're trying to, I don't know, like, do you think we're not going to read that, or Jackson's going to go, oh, you put that in the 8th paragraph. You tricked me. I did get the Jackson.
All you have to do is play. Call 1-800-GOT-JOB.
I don't know if I'll be able to jump for it. As long as I can pedal, I'll be all right. My name's Dan. We're here at 9th Street BMX Dirt Trails, right here in the shadow of the Capitol, Austin, Texas. It's a community, it's like a family. It's not just the ride. We have a lot of people that are, as we speak, right now, we get in, making it work. Look, we've got 34 years into it now. Totally homegrown. Somebody dumped some dirt and somebody said, hey, let's do some jumps. And nobody tore it down. 34 years later, we're still building, we're still growing, we're still having, changing, and the kids are going to do all that too. This only happens because people care. And that's what attracted me. I was attracted to the dirt. But then when I found out, it's about the community, it's about the gathering, it's about coming together for a common purpose. It's like almost an hour drive for me to get here. But it's still worth it. It's definitely my church. We have access to a lot of good riders here in Austin. And when you ride with people that are better than you, you just naturally get better. I'm 58 years old. I'm just trying to hang on to vitality. And I've found that exercise keeps me moving better, keeps me feeling better, keeps me off of the doctor's medications. And what better way to exercise than do something you enjoy? BMX did what physical therapy couldn't do. I used to be on pain meds for sciatica. Since I've been back riding BMX, I don't occasionally take it out on it. Core strength. The stronger my core got, the less pressure on my sciatica. Now I don't suffer from that. It just keeps me up. Plain and simple. This is advice I would give to anybody that's thinking about it. Do it. Quit making excuses. Quit waiting for the perfect time to just get on a bike.
How about, by the way, Sadow did it too. The new lawyer for Trump in Georgia dropped a footnote that he's appearing in some sort of healthcare fraud case in front of Eileen Cannon in Florida. Talk about this strange web that's been created here. The D. Oliveira, John Irving a similar saga as to Stan Woodward. You know, you've got two lawyers Trump bought and paid for through Save America PAC. One of the reasons the Save America PAC is basically bankrupt and has spent 72% of every small donor's dollars on legal expenses is because, at least in Mar-a-Lago and in Jan 6 related things related to the committee, Donald Trump ran around trying to get all the witnesses and all the indicted and unindicted co-conspirators behind lawyers of his choosing so he could pick up things. And you know, that costs a lot of money when you gotta buy witness intimidation. You know, it costs a lot of cash. He was busy running around. Cassidy Hutchinson needed a lawyer. So he hired like 10 or 12 lawyers for the Gen 6 committee witnesses to put them behind a protection wall for him. They started to do the same thing at Mar-a-Lago. The reason he's not doing it, Donald Trump, in Georgia is because the people in Mar-a-Lago and in Jan 6 are either still working for Donald Trump or work for his campaign or his PAC. So those people he felt like he had to protect. But others, like Rudy Giuliani even though there's going to be, I think by his brothers, you guys are going to cover it, there's going to be a $100,000 buy-in fundraiser at the scene of a crime. They're doing it at Bedminster to raise money for Rudy Giuliani's legal defense fund. They should have done it at Mar-a-Lago, but it's Bedminster, another place where he hid documents. So there's no shame here. You know, they're just shameless in what they're doing. But you got two issues that are being sorted out in front of a judge who's not that experienced and or is incompetent and or is corrupt, which is, see, you got me to say that then. One is Stan Woodward, who represents Walt Nauta, had represented Yacine Tavares, the IT worker, who's now cooperating with Jack Smith against the Oliveira and Stan Woodward about the server, the destruction of the server at the boss's request to get rid of the video evidence and all of that. So this is what happens when Stan Woodward represents like 5 different people, including 2 former aides from Donald Trump, and 1 from Melania Trump, and then Walt, and then he had the IT director, and then D. Oliveira's lawyer, John Irving, had him, and until with this recent filing, had what's referred to in the indictment as witness number 1, which is the former head of maintenance before D. Oliveira, who basically cooperated with the government and told that he's lying, that the other guy's lying. Witness number 2, who was an assistant to Donald Trump, who picked D. Oliveira out of the video and told the government that was him. But they had video surveillance footage of these guys hatching the plan at the basement. And then Trump employee number 3, which is a personal aide, or former personal aide to the president, who had a chat with Nauta, which led Nauta to hightail it back to Mar-a-Lago to get on erasing the server. So how you represent all of these people, okay, who are all going to testify against each other with all the cooperating witnesses now, this is the focus of the Garcia here. So to try to do it, to try to clear out some of the brush, as you said, man, John Irving fired 3 of his clients. Now, I don't know if they say independent. I don't know if that means another MAGA paid for lawyer, or that just means somebody that's really completely independent. We'll have to see who appears on their behalf. And then John Irving said, and I have a new counsel working with me, a guy named Donnie Morell. Donnie's going to do the cross-examination of one of my former clients, should that come up. Look, this is a cluster F. We see a lot of filings on the docket that are sealed. There's a lot of activity going on right now with Judge Bannon that has to do, I think, with some of these issues. For instance, John Irving has asked for a Garcia hearing about conflicts to be held in private, in camera with the judge, without the prosecution team present, to preserve all of their rights. I don't know if that's going to be granted, but a lot of this stuff you and I are going to be able to report on once things get unsealed. We can only speculate about a bunch of entries. Actually, Salty found the floor, our producer, that recently went up on the docket there. So, but you're so right. She invites chaos. Because of her speculating about things she should know or understand, like how grand juries work, which I never thought a federal judge would actually demonstrate their lack of knowledge in that area, fundamental to her job. But you know, I'm interested. Let's have briefing on this, and let's put the government back on its heels. She's spending so much time, and she used to be an assistant U.S. attorney. Okay, she's spending so much time trying to put the government back on its heels and making them jump through her imaginary hoops. Oh, you asked for sealing the jam, they asked for the sealing of the document correctly. Oh, I don't normally give the other side another brief after the last brief in a motion practice, but I'm going to create another brief for this guy. It's utter chaos, and it stands again. It's sharp contrast to how things are being done up 95 in D.C. with Judge Chutkan.
But I get it. Your instinct too, especially as a Florida federal litigator, though, is collegiality. I mean, look, I think it must be hard for you to, like any Florida litigator, in an evidence-based way, to not give a federal judge the benefit of the doubt. I think I would feel the same way if it was a Central District of California judge, who I've gone before, or could go before. You still want to have some hope that the federal judge is going to follow the judicial canons, but I think when it comes to the one named canon, she does not follow the canons. 18 years, 17 years, 15 years, 10 years, those numbers seem to be keeping Donald Trump up late at night. Those are the respective sentences for the terrorists in the Proud Boys organization. Ethan Norton, 18 years, 17 years, Joe Biggs, 15 years, Zachary Rell, 10 years for Dominic Pizzola, and Enrique Tarrio, who was hanging out at the White House before Christmas on December of 2020. His sentencing was moved to next week. The judge was under the weather, and so that one got moved. So I think that one will see the sentencing higher. The theme here is that those who were convicted of seditious conspiracy got higher sentences. This was the sentencing was handed down by Judge Tim Kelly, a Trump appointee, who I still think he gave these terrorists a little bit of a benefit of the doubt that they didn't deserve. In most of these cases, the government was asking for twice as long as the sentences were, and the government got there by asking for a terrorist enhancement. And I think Kelly said, oh, well, these people aren't terrorists, they're white. He didn't say that, but that's basically, as I read what they did was terrorism, okay? If these people look different and have different last names, I think there would be a different outcome here. I mean, I guess they are terrorists now. But, nonetheless, we still have some significant sentences. Wanted to talk about this one, Popak, before we went into the summary judgment, because the summary judgment's in a civil case, but just briefly, anything you wanted to add to that, the judge not applying the terrorist enhancement, but those
I think he was wrong, and I know where you're going with the people of different color would have gotten different results. I mean, Kelly has given out some lighter sentences and even dismissed some misdemeanor cases. He's not been the friend of the Department of Justice in sentencing. He got sort of, one of his sentences ties for the highest sentence being given out, that of Stuart Rhodes, who also got 18 years, so he gave somebody 18 years. But he cut in half, basically, the Department of Justice's request. He agreed with the Department of Justice that the Proud Boys are worse than the Oath Keepers, that all right-wing, white supremacist soldiers for Trump are not built the same. Like, as I said on a hot take, that the Proud Boys, if the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were in a dark alley together, the Oath Keepers would be scared of the Proud Boys. He agreed with that. He acknowledged that they were worse, that even though the Oath Keepers brought munitions into Washington, D.C., the Proud Boys were at the heart and at the tip of the spear of every bad thing that went down physically in the attack on Jan 6th, having Donald Trump having lit that fuse. So he agreed with that, but he, once again, and he's not the only judge, and Judge Maida got tied up with the terrorist enhancement too. They're loath to do it because I just think back to this concept of reverse engineering. They don't want to give out 30-year sentences for this, even though they should. And so they find a way not to. And the easiest way not to, in the way the sentencing guidelines operate, we've done this before, it is literally a chart. You give number points, you give points for each type of thing. The crime has a certain base level offense number. You give enhancements up, and you give departures down depending upon, the criminal acts. If the person has a criminal history, it's an enhancement up. Numbers go up, get added up. And the terrorism one is a big one. And that's why these judges are like cringing about, if I find them terrorists, that they use violence to obstruct or influence government operations, which is exactly what they did, which is also in the criminal elements, then I'm at a number I'm not comfortable with. So it's reverse engineering. The government wanted 33, 30, and 20 for all these people, and they got like half. They got a tie with the Oath Keepers guy, and but I don't know how you can do that, because how do you, as a federal judge, in the same breath as acknowledging that the Proud Boys are worse than the Oath Keepers, then why is the leaders of both ending up at the same number? That makes absolutely no sense. If I were the government, I would consider appealing the application or the failure to apply the terrorist enhancement at the appellate level, and send another message. We'll see. Right now they're busy convicting, and they're doing an excellent job. They're running the table on all of their trials. They haven't lost, as you said before, they haven't lost a jury trial since they started this process, which is remarkable. I mean, let's be frank, the Department of Justice wins the vast majority of cases that go to trial, because people should try to settle their cases and plead them out, and they don't. And then I think it's like you have a 90% chance of losing at that point up against the government. But I was disappointed. I had prepared myself for it with Kelly knowing his track record, but I was disappointed that he cut it in half. I think that's why the government went so high. They're like, we're in the sentencing guidelines. The number is 48, and the 48 means this amount of months, Judge. And for the judge to undo it, this is why there was a big struggle in the courtroom about the terrorist enhancement, as you noted before. But all right, they're going away for a long time. It's just not as long as I thought it was going to be.
Now let's talk about the New York Attorney General civil case. Civil means the case is about money. Money damages is what would be awarded at the end of this process. Also, an injunction to try and, which would, if instituted, would stop Donald Trump and his adult kids from doing business in the state of New York. Lots of money, too. New York Attorney General Letitia James is suing Donald Trump for at least $250 million. I think that trial she'll be asking for some, even significantly more than that. She filed what's called a motion for summary judgment. Donald Trump also filed a dueling summary judgment to try to get the case dismissed. A summary judgment basically says, Judge, there are no disputed facts here, so you should just decide, even before a trial, that the plaintiff is the one bringing it, which is usually more rare. The plaintiff brings summary judgment. Judge, you should find that the defendant is liable. We don't even need a trial, or we could just go to trial on damages. So the defendant brings a summary judgment. They're saying, Judge, there's no disputed facts here, and such, you should dismiss this case. We don't need a trier of fact to decide anything. Just say that this case is dismissed based on the pleading. So that's what these dueling summary judgment motions are doing. Popak, I want you to break down what New York Attorney General argued and why it's so important. Also, this case goes to trial in about 30, the next 30 days. Go to trial in early October. And then before you do that, though, I just want to remind everybody, I was thinking about the debate that we had over Judge Cannon and Marco Rubio, but I want to remind people to check out your origin story at the after show at Midas Touch Patreon site. So it's patreon.com/Midas Touch. You can hear all about Popak's origin story and how he joined the Midas Touch Network, how I met Popak. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Midas Touch. Popak, tell us about that.
And I know we're thinking about a potential Patreon for me going out there. We'll throw the poll up tonight in the chat, see if people want to have some special stuff that comes along with that.
That'd be great.
As well. But look, I'll tell you the interesting thing is the thing you said at the top of the segment, Ben, is that nobody so far, and maybe we'll wake up on Tuesday or over the weekend even, and I will be proven wrong, but the defense, the lawyers representing Donald Trump in the New York Attorney General case, which used to be Alina Habba, but now is her partner, her firm is still involved, and I think Chris Tice, no one's filed a motion to continue the case. 6 months ago, Judge Engoron said, hell or high water, I don't care. I know there's other trials that could be scheduled. It's October the 20 whatever, and that's when we're going to trial. And you'd think, I'm sure they were waiting to see if any of these other criminal cases were going to give them a good faith basis to ask for a continuation, a stay of the case. but nothing's happened so far. And even though Letitia James just a month ago in an interview on a podcast, of all places, not ours, although we definitely invite Letitia James to come onto our podcast, any of the podcasts, the Midas Touch Network, at any time, whenever she'd like, morning, noon, or night. But when she gave her interview, she said, no, I fully expect that my case is going to get bumped, and that's okay. We'll pick it up at another time. But it's not going to get bumped because, A, you've got the immovable force of a state court judge that wants to go to trial and has said, I'm not moving it. And nothing has really happened since that would change the expectations of the case go to trial. So I assume they're up to their elbows and necks getting prepared for a $250 million plus disgorgement case alleging civil fraud. And in anticipation of that, they now have to deal with what both sides, I guess, do with competing motions for partial summary judgment, which is a statement by or motion by the New York Attorney General that says, at least on the issue of the fact that he lied about value of his properties, we don't even have to put on a trial in front of a jury in front of that. The undisputed factual record, Judge, as this judge noted in a prior hearing, when he got frustrated based on representations that were being made in his court, and he said, the value of Trump Tower and his apartment there is empirical. It's either the number that he said it was, or it's some other number. But we don't, I don't really understand what the debate is over. He anticipated the summary judgment, or called for it, asked for it, many, many months ago. And she's answered the call and filed a motion that said, he said his apartment in New York is worth $300 million. Just to put that in perspective, the highest sale price for any unit in New York, even on Billionaires Row, which is what it's called in Manhattan, is I think $125 million by a hedge fund guy out of Chicago. Okay, which is a beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park, like five-story apartment. For Donald Trump to say his apartment's worth $300 million because he pumped up the square footage of it, that's where the judge said, look, it's either 10,000 square feet or it's 50,000 square feet. But that is a number that can be established. And she said, if you go through all of his trophy properties, the ones that he said in his deposition are the Mona Lisa or Renoir paintings hanging on a wall. They're whatever value people will place on them as trophy properties. She said, if you go through all these trophy properties, Mar-a-Lago, Bedminster Golf Course, 40 Wall Street, down by the Federal Reserve, which is a half-empty building that's been half-empty for a long, long time, Trump Tower, the apartment in Trump Tower, there is value. There is a number that can be established for it. There is a size and square footage of it. And he lied about it on his financial statements. He lied about it, about having independent appraisals. And we don't have to even go to a jury on it. There's no dispute. The fact that Donald Trump spends 400 pages of testimony to her talking about, and I'm not making this up, that he just considers the price to be irrelevant as set by an appraiser because his buildings in his property are like a Renoir or a piece of fine art, and it's whatever somebody makes up a number to buy it for, and it doesn't relate to the amount of revenue that the property generates or its expenses or its rent roll. You can't put a number on it like that because I own it. I mean, that is not going to fly, and that's not the law. And that shouldn't go before a jury, right? His subjective thoughts about how much, listen, I got a car, this is true. I've got a used car that I'm about to sell. I would love to sell that used car for $35,000. Unfortunately, the market tells me it's worth 16. And so that is what I'm going to be able to sell it for. And no amount of me talking about it is going to change the empirical truth of the value intrinsic.
Take that car example.
Yeah,
Because here's what Trump would do, right? He would say that the car is not valued at even $35,000. He would say the car is valued at $1 million. And then based on saying that he now has $1 million in equity, basically, in this car, he would then go to a bank or a lender or whoever and say, hey, can you give me 80% loan to value on that $1 million car? So I'd like to have $800,000 on the $1 million car, and then I'll pay it back over 30 years, which then he then fights the banks and doesn't pay it back. But then he takes that $800,000 in cash that he's pulled out after making that representation, and then he spends it somewhere else. and then does the exact same thing to that property. What then he'll take the $800,000 to do and say, oh, there's this piece of land over here in Westchester. I'm making it up. I'm going to go and buy that. And then he goes, well, now that's Trump land. So even though I bought that land with the $800,000 that I pulled out of the car, which is really worth $17,000, I now believe that my land is valued at $10 million, and that there's even a $20 million easement on that $10 million property. So you know what, government? I now want a $20 million tax deduction off of my taxes, because I'll give you an easement on the land that I bought for $800,000 that I now claim is worth $10 million. And what does he do with the $10 million piece of property? He takes out $8 million, say 80% loan to value, and then has repeated that his
That's
entire
Seven
career.
Springs, by the way. That's actually, you know that. That's actual property.
That's again, and I want you to give it an example.
But
And then what he'll say though is, well, hey, the banks are happy. I paid back the loan on the car. They got their $800,000. Well, first off, where'd you get it? Well, when you now inflated the price of your other property and you pulled out a loan there, you robbed Peter basically to pay Paul. So sure, Paul's happy, but Peter may not be happy. Down the line, they may not be, but their happiness is irrelevant at the end of the day if you're basically using this Ponzi scheme style model, which is the way I just described it, which is kind of what's going on here. Because who's getting screwed? Like all of us. Like the people like Michael Popak, who's going to sell his car for $17,000. You at home, you're not waking up, people who watch Legal AF, I hope not, and thinking to yourself, how am I going to overinflate the value of this and extract this and do that? No, you're going about paying taxes, which you're supposed to pay. You're going about your life doing the things that you're supposed to
And
do.
the bank has a finite amount of money, and if somebody takes out more than they're entitled to, it's less for the mom and pop to borrow from. This is the problem with this number. This is where she got it. In the deposition, and I'll take on it later, the Doral Golf Course, which has the Blue Monster down in Florida, which I actually haven't done, I did over there. She said to him, well, what do you think the value of that is? He says, oh, it's, I don't know, $2.5 billion. He said, really? How do you come up with that? You'd be thinking, oh, well, he has appraisals. He's gone to a bank. There's estimates. They've done cost-benefit analysis. They've taken the rent roll and the amount that he said, no. He said, I could build a lot of houses there. So you've done any of that research? Have you applied for any of the zoning variances to build a lot of houses on it? No. But this is what you said. It's a Trump property. And when it's a Trump property, it's a made-up number in my mind. And to say that it's victimless, which is what he's been arguing, the banks don't mind. I paid back Deutsche Bank all the money that I owed them last year when I refinanced everything else, as you said, as part of the Ponzi scheme. But they are victims, because it would be like, to continue these analogies, it would be like somebody who robbed a bank and then paid it back and said there's been no crime. The fact that he took out $1 billion when he really, based on the value of the property, was only capable of taking 250 million, that he paid back the whole billion doesn't mean he hasn't committed a crime. Sure, they've been made whole, but they overlent to somebody who didn't deserve it. That's called fraud, and that's the basis of this case. Now, he's filed his motion for just to round it out, he's filed his motion for summary judgment because they did get the defense one win recently. They argued, and the appellate court just above the court that this trial is in, the First Department Court of Appeals in New York, said that there is a statute of limitations that applies, and certain of these transactions, she didn't bring her case fast enough, and they fall off the continuum, and they can't be the basis of her case under her broad powers of Executive Law 63-12 in New York, which is anti-fraud provisions for the Attorney General. And they cut Ivanka out because of that, because she sort of fell off. The bad things that Ivanka could have been charged with happened before the statute of limitations ran. So they're arguing again that her case is too broad, that many of the properties and valuation issues that she continues to raise, Judge, are beyond what the appellate court said is the proper statute of limitations. You should shrink or dismiss this case. I don't think he's going to grant that. He does have to apply the appellate court decision, though, and get the dates right on what properties are in and out of the case, and I'm sure he will do that. So the case will be tailored a little bit more. it's going to trial. He's gonna have to make this ruling. Ben, they just filed these motions a couple of days ago. Each side gets the chance to oppose it and file a last brief, and then the judge has to make a decision while they all get ready for trial. So, that's the fevered activity that's going on, while Donald Trump acts like nothing's going on in his world, even though he's got 7 cases set over the next 9 months. I said on a hot take recently, I assure you, the vast majority of law firms in this country do not, I would say 99% of them don't have 7 cases set over the next 9 months as Donald Trump does in this country.
And expect, I think, no matter what the outcome there is, Donald Trump to go to the appellate division on an emergency basis, try to ask for a stay or something on an emergency. So let's be aware that that's probably what Trump is planning to do as well. But I'm with you. 7 trials lined up like that, even for a large law firm of hundreds of lawyers, that would be a significant trial calendar. But that's what Donald Trump has lined up. That's what we have lined up here to discuss on Legal AF. Want to, again, thank you, Michael Popak, for just being my co-host. I appreciate you so much. And we appreciate everybody here at Legal AF. The audience is so incredible. This community that you all built as the Legal AFers, the Mighty Mighty, has been so strong, and we're so grateful for everything that you do. Spread the word about the show, even to one family member, friend, coworker, colleague, whoever. 1, 2, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, post about the show. That goes a long way to help build this platform and spread these important messages about evidence, about facts, about truth, and of course about our opinions, but our opinions are informed through a very rigorous analysis that we do here. And I don't think that really exists in many other platforms, where we break down these filings in painstaking ways, and then we explain to you why we've arrived at our opinion, and you may agree or disagree with our opinions, but I hope ultimately what you'll respect is that they are rooted in what the evidence actually says, and that's where I think that shouldn't be unique to a political party. Fortunately, that's the way it is right now, that I think there's only one major political party right now, which is the Democrats in a pro-democracy coalition with a group of liberals, progressives, independents, people not affiliated with political parties, and actual conservatives, not this MAGA Republican mutation of people who go, hey, these are the facts, right? This is the evidence, right? And we can disagree on stuff, right? Yeah, but these are the facts, and we like our democracy, right? Yeah, check. That's, to me, where I think things are most most important. That's what we focus on here on the network. Remember to now check out the after show that we previously have recorded with Michael Popak, and so that's posted right now. You can learn about Michael Popak's origin story. Go to patreon.com/MidasTouch, patreon.com/MidasTouch. Learn about Michael Popak's origin story now. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Make sure you click the sponsor links in our description. Support them. We have some great sponsors, and it's helpful that when the sponsors are supported, so they can renew on the show, to also help grow the platform and the show. And for everyone who became a member on our YouTube chat, thank you so much for becoming a member. That goes a long way to help as well. Again, we don't have outside investors here, so it's kind of community-based support growth here, and thank you for all of that. And no worries if you're not, a member. Hopefully you've gotten gifted one, but if not, just share the videos. That's the best way that you can help, and we so appreciate you. Anyway, we'll see you next time on Legal AF. Oh yeah, go to store.midastouch.com for all of the Legal AF gear. Did I forget about that? 100% union made, 100% made in the USA. There are those Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and Michael Popak design shirts. I love those Legal AF shirts. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time with, I'm sure, some more breaking historic news here on Legal AF. Shout out to the Midas.
Car's ready.
Or it's you. In and out, and it's you.
So their argument next day, case 17-7505, Madison versus Alabama. Mr. Chief.
Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court. It's undisputed that Vernon Madison now sits on Alabama's death row, unable to fully orient to time and place. The authority to execute someone who's not in immediate threat is an awesome power. And that power has to be utilized fairly, reliably, and humanely.
For most of my career, I've provided legal representation to people on death row. I've argued a bunch of cases before the United States Supreme Court, and each time I go, I stand there in front of the court, and I read what it says about equal justice under the law.
All right, thank you, officer.
I have to believe that to make sense of what I do. I've been thinking a lot recently about an incident that took place when I was a little boy. My mom saved up enough money for my sister and I to get on a church bus trip to the new Disney World that had just opened up. I remember being so excited about it, because not only were we going to go to Disney World, we would be staying in a hotel, and the hotel would have a swimming pool. My sister and I had never been in a real swimming pool. As we pulled into the hotel, my sister started squealing. As soon as the bus stopped, she grabbed me, and we went streaking over to this pool. I grabbed her hand, and we jumped high in the air, and we landed in that pool, and it was as glorious as I had imagined it would be. It was just unbelievable. And we were having such fun, and then I realized that chaos had broken out around us. White parents were frantically running into the water, snatching their children violently out of the pool. And I was looking at my sister, I was looking, trying to figure out what is going on. Finally, one little boy left in the pool. This big guy came, he snatched him by the arm and lifted him out of the water. And the little boy started crying hysterically. I turned to that white man and I said, "What's wrong?" And he gave me this look, and he said, "You're wrong, nigger." We got out of the pool, and I ran to my mom, and when I told her what the man said, she looked at me and she said, "You get back in that pool." She said, "Don't you let those people run you from that pool." What I remember most vividly from that trip is getting back in the pool and standing in the corner of the pool, holding my sister's hand and desperately trying not to cry. What do you do with a memory like that? I still remember that. And the question becomes, do the white kids remember the day they were forced out of the pool by their parents because two black kids got into the water? Memory is powerful. It's a powerful force in the way a society evolves. We have a constitution that talks about equality, liberty, and justice for all. And for decades, for centuries, we tolerated enslavement of other human beings. We tolerated abuse and violence against people. We tolerated bigotry and discrimination. And in thinking about what it would take to move this court and this country to a place of greater resolve when it comes to eliminating bias and discrimination, it became clear to me that we haven't really talked much about the legacy of racial bias. I think there's a kind of smog in the air that's created by the history of slavery, lynching, segregation. And I don't think we're going to get healthy. I don't think we can be free until we address this problem. But the good thing
truth.
You know, I was just going through my files a couple of days ago, and I actually had this pad that had notes of an interview I did with Rosa Parks. I had the great privilege of knowing Rosa Parks when I moved to Montgomery in the 1980s. As a young lawyer, I met an extraordinary woman who was the architect, really, of the Montgomery bus boycott. She was an amazing person. Her name was Johnny Carr. And Johnny Carr was a force to be reckoned with. When I moved to Montgomery, Ms. Carr called me up and she said, "Brian, I understand you're a young lawyer and you just moved to town." I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "When I call you up and ask you to do something, what you're going to do is you're going to say, 'Yes, ma'am.'" And one day she called me up, she said, "Brian, I want to tell you, Ms. Parks is coming back to town. So we're going to get together and we're going to talk. Do you want to come over and listen?" I said, "Oh, yes, ma'am." And I listened to these women talk for 2 hours. They weren't talking about the things they had done. They were talking about the things they were still going to do. And finally, after 2 hours, Ms. Parks turned to me and she said, "Now, Brian, tell me about the Equal Justice Initiative. Tell me what you're trying to do." And I looked at Ms. Carr to see if I had permission to speak. And she nodded, and so I gave her my whole rap. I said, "Ms. Parks, we're trying to end the death penalty. We're trying to do something about racial bias. We're trying to do something about the poor. We're trying to do something about conditions of confinement." When I finished, she looked at me and she said, She said, "That's going to make me tired, tired, tired." And Ms. Carr leaned forward and she put her finger on my face and she said, "That's why you've got to be brave, brave, brave."
In 1989, we set up this project here in Montgomery, Alabama, to provide legal services to poor people, incarcerated people, condemned people on death row. Alabama doesn't have a public defender system, and there's just a lot of people desperate for help.
Alabama has the highest death sentencing rate in the country per capita, and I think, from the very beginning, Brian's sense was we should do as many cases as possible.
I think of a wrongful conviction as any conviction where the law has not been followed, where there have been illegal practices and policies. It doesn't mean the person is innocent. There's a lot of people who did the things they were accused of, but he can be properly convicted and unfairly sentenced.
We're going to start moving because of limited time.
I think in law school I conceived of myself as becoming a great lawyer and winning cases that get people out of prison. And that is a huge part of what we do.
So just wanted to get some reaction to that idea, make sure that you're comfortable with it.
But I think you have to be more than a lawyer in the sort of technical sense.
I'd never met a lawyer, ever, until I got to law school, and my time in the school was frustrating because I didn't need lawyers who seemed to represent something I wanted to do. And I tried to rationalize accepting a career as a lawyer that I knew was not going to be fulfilling. And it was frankly in the midst of that I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and spent a month with the Southern Prisoners Defense Committee. And for the first time, I met a lawyer who seemed to represent something that excited me.
I do think that the issue before us is how the death penalty works in practice. And the fact of the matter is the death penalty, and I practice in the death belt states of the South, and the evidence is undeniable that the death penalty is a result of race, poverty, politics, and the passions of the moment.
One thing that's immediately apparent with the death penalty in the South is it's about race and class. You see lots of things in the South. But when you go to the courthouse, nothing has changed. It's like back in 1940 or 1950.
to a cookout. Always have you a taste mountain. That's my taste mountain right there. He gonna let me know if it's right. Oh, wait till it tastes. Good in the same time.
Anybody can do it. Not a care in the world, just trying to get up every morning and put one foot forward and do the best you can and just enjoy life. It was just good to be who I was at that particular time. At least that's why I found myself in a situation that I never should have been in. I was 29 years old. Woke up like 8 a.m. Ate breakfast and my mom asked me to go out there and cut the grass. About 15 to 20 minutes ago, cutting the grass. And then I had to cook. And there's still two white gentlemen at the edge of the back porch. I cut the lawn off and I said, "Can I help you?" And one of them was like, "We are detectives from the police department." And I said, "Okay, how can I help you?" And he said, "Well, we have a warrant for your arrest." Oh, I went to jail. The detective come out and asked me do you own a pistol? And I said, "No." He said, "Do your mother own a pistol?" I said, "No." Yes. I said, "She owned an old 38 Smith & Wesson." My mom gave me the pistol. I asked her, "Why am I being arrested?" Never would respond. I asked him again, but it took the first time, "Why am I being arrested?" He said, "You don't want to know why I'm being arrested?" He said, "You arrest for an arrest and you took." I said, "You got the wrong person. I ain't got none of that." He said, "Let me tell you something right now. I don't care what you did or didn't do. There's 5 things that's going to convict you." He said, "Number